And that was what established the honor, was to go to peace and understand that that agreement is for peace and maintain it. You're not here, like I said, diplomacy. I'm an ambassador. It's about decorum, honor, and maintaining that peaceful settlement, maintaining peace, as much as it depends on me, be at peace with all people, and I am.
Yeah.
And they know that. They know. They put him in prison because of his dishonor. And if I had not done the honorable thing, they would have put me there as well.
How does this all tie in, before we get out of here today, because we've gone a couple of hours, how does this tie in with this whole idea of one world government and a bunch of really nasty people that's being hammered into people's brains around the internet, that there is a group of people that are just evil and they want to get rid of 1 billion people and all this kind of crap? Do you think there's any substance to that, or are there actually, it almost sounds like you're saying there's people at the top of the totem pole here that want you and I to be free?
I believe this, Patrick, because I had to look at everything I do from a universal perspective first. And I do believe that there's honor in this universe. And I do believe that, therefore, that would have to roll down to this planet. And I believe that there is a system of honor behind things that run everything. In terms of these nation states and how they govern here, I just mentioned that people in the United States cannot keep contracts. They can't keep agreements. And I call it Cypher syndrome, right? Cypher was the guy in the Matrix movie who was wanted to be put back in the power plant and said that ignorance was bliss.
Right.
Well, ignorance is not bliss, and it's not honorable. And so if you're going to, as James Madison said, knowledge is always going to govern ignorance, and those who want to be their own governors had better arm themselves with the power that knowledge gives them. So that requires a lot of responsibility, but I do believe that honor is behind the system, and I specifically saw it when I started writing to the U.S. as ambassador, and they started writing me back as ambassador, that they would follow the agreement. And as long as I was doing the peaceful settlement and I wasn't, as it says, going against an innocent or unoffending state, or a state that was not an aggressor. Now, the U.S. is an aggressor against a lot of other people, but not against us. It's because we'll never do anything. We're not going to do anything unpeaceful and violate any of those agreements, any of those treaties.
And so, the United States actually writes you back now when you write them?
Yes. If I need something, sometimes I'll write a court, like for work I did years ago, and they'll, well, how would you like this addressed the way we did before? I say, sure, put it right on the envelope.
It's pretty interesting, because the U.S. and all their little minions, they don't answer anybody these days, except with foreign letters, right? Little foreign letters.
They don't answer citizens because the president has a power of the king, and they're under martial law, under the Lieber Code. And that's is really, after all the history and everything we've talked about, Patrick, that really is the ultimate conclusion. And I had to realize this. Like I said, black ink on white paper, why would Patrick Henry, you have the same name, Patrick, why would Patrick Henry say that the president had the powers of a king if it weren't true?
Well,
now you better figure out whether he's a righteous king or an unrighteous king.
Yeah, you better figure out. Well, David, we're going to wrap for this morning. This has been one of the more fascinating couple of hours I've spent. But I have to ask you, and I once again, with all due respect, I remember at the end of a great book that I love was Jonathan Livingston Seagull about 25 years ago. His last page, I don't know if you remember it or read the book, he says, everything in here may be wrong, which I really appreciated. He said that. What's the possibility that everything you're saying, or most of it, what you're saying is just not right, and you could be helping people go down a rabbit hole with this immunity thing that they don't really want to go and could end up in the hokey pokey. You think that's possible?
No.
Because?
I don't think so.
Because?
And the reason I don't think so is because it's rooted into my core now that every nation on this planet exists because of the right of self-determination. And if you read their own documents, the ones that, like I said, I do believe there's honor behind this system, the king himself actually honored the agreements, the King of Great Britain, in 1783. He said, fine, I'll give you the land grants. You guys want to come out from under my rule, out from under my reign? No problem. Just pay me the debt. If they'd have paid the debt, we wouldn't be in the situation that this place is now. So they didn't honor their agreements. It wasn't the king; it was them. The king honored his agreements.
Well, how is it? Oh, go ahead.
Well, you're asking me, is it possible? And I have to stick to certain universal principles.
Sure,
reason throughout 4,000 years, whether Israel left Egypt, whether the 10 tribes split or whatever, this has always been done for economic reasons, because it's the economic reasons that become tyrannical, overtaxation or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason that those 55 men did it with the Declaration of Independence. The question is did they invite everyone in, or were they more like Pharisaical and, they entered the temple but closed the door? Mm-hmm. My contention is they closed the door. Well, so you have to open up a new door.
If we're not on the good end or the positive end of the Declaration and the Constitution, how is it that we've ended up on the bad end as the debtors that we're paying, what is it, about $400 billion a year in interest as a people on the interest on the debt owed to these people? Was it all because of the 14th Amendment that we got scallywagged into that?
No, it was actually under the Constitution. The Constitution in Article 1, or Article 6, Clause 1, said that all debts that were formerly contracted by the Confederacy under the Articles of Confederation shall now be paid by the United States.
Oh, not by us, the people signing this thing, but by the United States.
Well, but see, how was the United States going to pay the debt? The way they were going to pay the debt was to collect imposts, duties, fees, and taxes, which is go back to Article 1, Section 8. And that's how they said it, regulate commerce among other nations and among Indian tribes, all the different ways, setting up post office, post roads. And finally, what Patrick Henry called in Article 1, Section 8, the last sentence, he called it the sweeping clause, the ability to pass all laws necessary. So from that time forward, and the colonists that were here paying the impost, duties, fees, and taxes, that's literally how, in the Constitution, they reestablished their credit. They started paying their debts. It's how Hamilton did it. It's how they actually established national credit to later on come back and be able to borrow money from France again to buy the Louisiana Purchase.
But if the people that signed it were the only ones who were going to get the real benefits, as you've been arguing, how is it then they can put people who didn't sign it into some obligation? That doesn't. How do you get both ends of that deal?
Because those people never exercised their right of self-determination to come out from under. They were either British subjects, or when they did the Jay Treaty in '95, the British subjects' status changed to U.S. citizens.
But they didn't agree to it. They didn't agree. They didn't know anything about it. They didn't want to participate in the Constitution and this stuff. How is it that they had to become agreeable to this if they didn't know anything about it or agree to it? By their silence?
By their silence, absolutely. That they were British subjects. I'm telling you, this is the hard thing to comprehend. Even at that time, they were barely coming out of the divine right of kings. They always wanted or kept a king over them for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Never
really wanted self-determination or self-responsibility.
Exactly. And that's why, for me, when I found that document 6 years ago, that I knew the right of exile became the right of self-determination in 1947, I literally danced around the room. I couldn't believe I found it. I was like, here's the key that fits the door.
So you're suggesting there is a silver bullet, in a way?
I'm say it again?
There is a silver bullet, in a way? A silver bullet for freedom?
I'm suggesting that silver bullet is actually very simple. It is very simple, Patrick. It's not easy, but it is simple.
Mm-hmm. Why isn't it easy, David?
Because the state of the condition of the world at this time, the economics, people simply are not taking care of their economics, and they have violated a very, very hard universal principle that's killing them right now. Literally killing them. Most